Hello, this is Sandra Pummel, and I'm coming to you from Templeton, California. And today I just realized that I have not been on a video in a while, and so I thought I would make a random one really quickly because I have some extra time and I really like making videos. I really I really like making videos. Yes, and I do have a YouTube channel. So, I do. I have an older one, and that one is, well, kind of out of date, I guess I would say. And then I have a newer one, but it doesn't have all the content on it yet for future podcasts, but it does have a few podcasts on it. Um, Today I just thought I'd make a little Facebook video because sometimes I like to do that, and I guess I was trying to think of a good topic to discuss, and there's different ones that came up in my mind, but I guess I'll just be real with you guys and just say that a spiritual a spiritual topic that I could talk to you about today is the concept of Egypt and Canaan in the Bible. So the symbolism of Egypt is actually um, pretty interesting. The Israelites were led out of the nation of Egypt in the Bible in order to make it to Canaan. And Egypt was a land of comfort, but it was also a land of bondage. And Canaan was the promised land that they were destined to go into. And it has a very interesting story associated with it. But the symbolism of it is that Egypt was a land of comforts where things were pleasant for the Israelites. And so even though they were in slavery and they were in bondage, they were comfortable there, and there was like plenty of really good food to eat, and it was warm, and they felt like they were in their comfort zone when they were there, even though they were in complete and total slavery. And so when they came into the wilderness, they wandered for, I believe it was 40 years in the wilderness. And they complained about the journey because they were getting manna, which wasn't familiar to them. It wasn't what they were used to. It wasn't what their appetites craved. So they were more concerned about their earthly appetites and how they felt about things than about the spiritual context. And really ultimately the perseverance that it would take and the faith that it would take to reach Canaan. They had completely lost spiritual sight, from my revelation of what I understand about the story. But so interesting, you think about the promised land, the destiny that they were headed toward, and that only a couple of them ended up entering into that. And it was because of their unbelief and their attitude when they were walking through the wilderness. And so it's comparable really to, in Celebrate Recovery they call it hurts, habits, and hangups. It's really Celebrate Recovery is it's like a Christian 12-step program for people that are it's not just for substances, it's for people with, codependency, other addictions, food addictions, gambling, anything like that. And in this society particularly, a lot of people struggle with bondages and addictions. And so, many people are called out of that and into another lifestyle. But because it's not instant gratification, because the path itself is, sometimes arduous, sometimes difficult, there's hardship, there's trial, you have to go through things, you have to walk through situations. Sometimes people want to go back into their bondage, into slavery, because it's something that was comfortable for them, and because it felt good, tasted good, whatever, it may be. Just like the Israelites felt when they wanted to go back to Egypt because it was comfortable, but ultimately a land of bondage that would lead them into destruction. And so God was trying to free them from that. But there's a process that takes some perseverance, some longevity, some endurance, and certainly can't be done alone. I mean, when they were released, they weren't released by themselves. There was a group of them all together, but only a few of them were able to enter into the promised land, which is interesting because, you know, just like today, you see that only some people will succeed in their recovery path from whatever it is they're trying to recover from. And I think Some of that has to do with the individual. Some of it has to do with, I think, the lies that are told within some of the circles and some of society, and the things that are talked about that are not necessarily true, that people come into agreement with, and the way that the devil, the enemy, really plays on that. But I think a lot of it's just that, there is one almighty God, and not everybody is submissive to that. And so it's like, how can you get the results of a spiritual life if you're not truly living spiritually for God? And if you don't truly want to, lay down the person doesn't want to lay down their life for the cost of discipleship to be able to follow that path. And most people aren't really willing to do that. And so they never really enter into I mean, everyone's called into, there's a human destiny and then there's a divine destiny. And divine destiny is a whole thing. It's super interesting. Um, there is such thing as free will and all of that, but a lot of people use that as an excuse, I feel like, too. But there's also like a destined path that God has for people, like a purpose for their lives on this earth. And a lot of people never really find that, I think, because um they're not they're not submitted to the God that is authoring the destiny, and they don't want to walk through the steps to get there. So this was kind of on my mind because I have had this revelation like many years ago, but I've just never really shared it publicly, and I thought it was a good time to put it out there. um I may post this on YouTube. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's just a really interesting story, and so comparable to the way that things are today. And I just love when the Bible kind of parallels what goes on in the world today, and that um, that we can succeed if we keep on the path. But it certainly does take a lot of faith, and it certainly does take a lot of support. So I think that's why, although we're walking our journeys individually alone, I believe. I mean, a lot of people say you're not alone, but it's like when you're walking through something, you certainly feel like you're alone. But there is community. There are people around us that are in, you know, a different situation, that are going through something too. So it's like when they say the common saying, we're all in the same boat. I would say that that's completely not true, and it's really bothered me when people say that, because we're not all in the same boat, but we are on different boats on the same ocean. So my boat is different than someone else's boat, is different from someone else's boat, but we're all on the same ocean. So it's like, the navigation looks different through the waters, and the storm looks different, and the size of the boat, and the way that it functions and things like that. But with God in the ship can fulfill its purpose. So anyway, that's my talk for today, and I just, you know, want to put it out there because this is what I do. And thank you so much for tuning in. This is Sandra Pummel.